Hi, today we're at the Minnesota History Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And my name is Marvin Anderson. I'm the State Law Librarian. And my guest today is Archie Givens, who is the editor of a brand new book called Spirited Minds, and is also the chairman of the Archie Givens Senior Collection of African American Literature at the University of Minnesota. We're going to talk today about reading the collection at the University of Minnesota, and we're going to spend some time talking about Archie's book that he just edited on Spirited Minds. Archie, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Spirited Minds is a wonderful, I think it's a wonderful resource guide for teachers, for educators, for librarians, for anyone really who works with young readers. And in this instance, we're really tailoring it to young African American male readers. And it's just a great resource.
How did it come about, Archie?
We were fortunate enough, meaning the Givens Foundation for African American Literature, were fortunate enough to be approached by the Lilly Endowment in Indiana. And they were working on an initiative for young male African American males in the Indiana area. And they're trying to create safe spaces, safe spaces for kids to go after school. And one of the places they decided would be a very safe and appropriate place is a library.
Right.
And once you go to a library, though, most librarians, most teachers are really not up on the best resource reading materials or informational reading materials for that group of kids. So we created this book on behalf of the Lilly Endowment, and we even took it another step further. There's 106 titles in here, Marvin,
okay,
that are geared for young men to help them create values, to see heroes that they can relate to.
Right.
But even better, it's reading level appropriate. So we have graded these stories, these annotations, for different reading levels. So an 8th grade English teacher can decide what is the best information in a biography or a poem for her reading class. One of the things that really make this book very unique is the illustrations. We have original illustrations that separate each area: autobiographies, biographies, poetry. The other thing is that it's got color. Each page is one annotation, so it's very user-friendly and easy to sift through. And the other thing is that there's really some good literature that will lead you to other information and stories you might want to find. I just got through reading Max Found Two Sticks, which is for 3rd graders, but it's an interesting book because Brian Pickney is a wonderful illustrator, and you'll see him in many other books. Sidewalk Story. There's just some great ways to use this book. Hoops is a wonderful novel by Walter D. Myers, again with the illustration that's original, and the color. Each page has a little color, so it's very, very, very user-friendly.
You were involved as the editor, so you had a chance to look at all of these books.
I had a chance to go through all of them, which was quite a challenge because this is just representative of the whole wealth of African American literature that's out there, and we had to be representative. So there's some history and there's also some current fiction. And we had to be inclusive. So,
I see that Gordon Parks, a Minnesota resident and the famous photographer and musician, wrote an introduction. How did that come about?
We were really fortunate to have Gordon Parks, who, as you're correct, is a Minnesota, St. Paul native, to write our introduction. And we approached Gordon because he's very familiar with our foundation work. He's very familiar with the Givens collection at the university. And we approached him to see if this subject of reading, of course, would be interesting to him, but how he would approach it to explain it to people. And what we have in here is a very, very warm, heartfelt introduction from Gordon when he talks about how he searched high and low as a kid for black heroes and stories that featured people he could relate to and couldn't find them.
Okay.
And why it's important in his reading and helped him succeed.
What's been the reception of Spirited Minds so far? Kind of, people been buying it?
It's been very warmly received. and it's been received by a variety of people in terms of, I mentioned school teachers, but grandparents who are trying to bring up, help their grandkids read, or parents who want to work with their kids and read with them. It's being received extremely well nationally. It's based on these critical literature, but it's got a whole broad appeal.
Well, that's great. Now, I just saw this one that you handed me earlier, and it says, an outstanding new reading resource for parents, grandparents, teachers, and mentors. And this is signed by Dear Abby. Is this the Dear Abby of the newspaper fame?
It is the Dear Abby,
Okay.
the columnist Dear Abby. We provided her a book as just part of our way of introducing it, and explained to her why I thought this was important.
Okay.
And she picked right up on it, and in her column had a feature about a great new resource that she discovered, and that's a direct quote from her, and she graciously allowed us to use it.
Now, Spirited Minds is subtitled African American Books for Our Sons and Brothers, but it's not meant just for African American sons and brothers. It's for the total community, isn't it?
It's really for the broad community, yeah. It really is a way to introduce African American authored literature predominantly to the wide variety of people. It's because the stories are great.
Okay.
There's a kid's book, John Henry, which we probably all, he's a hammering man and all, that we all probably have heard the story of John Henry. Well, that's a universal story about a hero who really comes in and helps the town and has strength, and he uses it to really help everyone. And that's a universal story. It has.
Have you
meaning.
found that to be a misconception sometimes, where people think because it's an African American book that it has no general interest to people, non-African Americans?
I think, yeah, we have, Marvin, we've found that in terms of how it's marketed from the publisher's point of view, and the audience that they think it should be targeted to, and who looks at it on a bookshelf, and how they put it in a bookstore in African American literature as opposed to just general literature.
Right.
While that's the area we're going after for young kids, young African American kids, the story, the literature, the poems, the human interest transcends everyone.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm hoping that a broad audience reads this and gets introduced to a whole wonderful part of our American literature.
Is there Spirited Minds this is for our sons and brothers. Is there one for our daughters and sisters?
Well, it's believe it or not, there is one coming out. We're in the process of doing it right now for young women readers. It will be out this summer, and it's called Strong Souls, or at least the title now is Strong Souls Singing. And it's geared towards young women readers, featuring predominantly African American women writers.
Okay.
But with the same values. We're trying to teach stories about human development and real life issues that we deal with.
Oh, that's great. Now, some of the books in Spirited Minds are in the Givens collection at the University of Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yes. As a matter of fact, about 90% of them are found in the Givens collection.
And the Givens collection is located, can you tell our audience where it's located?
Sure. The Givens collection is located at the University of Minnesota Wilson Library.
Okay.
And that's on the 4th floor over there. And the reason it's in Wilson Library is because that's where all the rare books that the University of Minnesota keeps are stored. And this is, the Givens collection is some 6,000 volumes of first edition rare literature. It's rare, Marvin, because we have the first book ever published by an African American.
Is that right?
A woman by the name of Phil Sweetley.
All right, the poet.
The poet, and it was published in 1773.
Is that right?
And we have the original.
Is that right?
And so it's kept in the rare books area.
Now, who uses the Givens collection? What type of person uses that?
We, the scholars from around the country are finding access to it. University students use it a lot, but we've made it broader as part of our community outreach, and you're very much a part of that, to make it open to a broader audience, the community as a whole. And so while you may not be able to come up to Wilson to access it, we've tried to encourage most libraries and others to have copies of what's in the collection within their holdings. So, and we've taken it out in the community in terms of exhibitions, in terms of curriculum guides we've produced, video programs such as this, to make it really accessible to the community as a whole.
There have been a lot of people who have seen the collection through the traveling exhibit. In fact, I think the last time I looked at the figures, was it almost, how many people saw the traveling exhibit that was going around the country?
There's a traveling exhibit, and it's focuses on the Harlem Renaissance, which is the 1920s and 30s flowering of activity in African American culture across the board. But this exhibit has been seen now by almost 2 million people.
2 million.
We've been from coast to coast and also throughout the state of Minnesota, and we're not over yet.
Are there any plans to bring that exhibit back? Our audience could see it in the near future, anytime soon?
Right now it's in San Francisco, actually just opened in San Francisco. I would think it will be back here maybe early fall again, where we can make it more available to everybody. The other unique thing is we've taken books from the collection and put it in various other exhibitions in museums and other places around the state here. So we try and just keep an awareness.
In fact, we're here at the History Center in our gathering places, which is a brand new exhibit here at the History Center. I think the Givens collection was contacted about submitting some materials here, weren't they?
We were contacted, yes. The Gathering Place exhibition, and I encourage everybody to come see it.
Yes,
it's just
it's fabulous.
It's a wonderful walkthrough of Minnesota history for African American community and places we would gather as kids and as our parents did, and so we have some books that are a couple of Gordon Parks, as a Minnesota author, and some others that just represent our unique cultural history and literature, as well as in spaces like this.
Now, before we came over today, I went through some statistics, and I found that the African American buying public, or the people who buy the books with African American themes, is approaching almost $400 million a year in gross revenue. That's just a tremendous amount of people who are interested in this literature. And how can the Givens collection help direct people to the right literature? Spirited Minds one way of doing that?
Spirited Minds is definitely one way of doing that. As I say, there are 106 titles in here. They're very user-friendly, annotated information. The sister volume will be almost the same number, 105 titles. That will be user-friendly. We've got other materials that help direct people towards this literature. It's I think that number is staggering in terms of the purchasing and economic impact, besides the fact that people are reading our literature.
Yeah, it's bound to be, and I think it will probably grow as more and more bibliographies, and like you've just completed, are being done. The collection itself, will it be housed at Wilson for, you say Wilson Library? There are some plans right now to move the collection, isn't that correct?
There are plans underway at the University of Minnesota to build a brand new center that will house all their special collections.
Right.
You know, in maintaining a special collection, you have to have climate control, you've got to have other kind of issues so that it's here 100 years from now.
Right.
So the university has committed resources to build this brand new $35 million facility, or plus, I guess, $35 million plus, to house collections like ours. Ours will have a very special room unto itself. It will be available for readings and lectures and receptions, and as well as for people to come in and browse through the collection.
And that will be in the new center at Wilson Library. I don't know what it's going to be called.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of it. So right now they call it the Access Center, but it will be out a whole new complex, separate from Wilson Library. It will be its own physical space.
If there are any teachers or parents who would be interested in knowing more about the Givens collection and what's being done, how can they contact us? How can they contact the collection? Are we in the book? I don't know.
We're on the University of Minnesota's website right now, but we're going to create our own.
Right.
So will be internet access before the end of the year. They can certainly call the Givens Foundation for African American Literature, which is here in Minneapolis. and it's in the book, and
Okay.
it's available. And they can go through the University of Minnesota libraries
Okay.
to find out more information or how to schedule a tour.
And by now, most public libraries and around the Twin Cities at least are aware of the Givens collection, and they could probably just get a reference from there to contact you,
Yes, they should be able to.
and you'll be able to work with them, or the curriculum guide, the other things.
I
that
would
we're
be glad to. As a matter of fact, we were at the Minnesota Education Association meeting and had a booth next to MetroNet, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
To collect a list, and we're in the process of mailing out to over 100 people who signed up for information. So, we're available through various outlets.
Yeah, I just recall the curriculum program that we sponsored some years ago at St. Cloud State.
Yes.
That was another way we did some outreach, wasn't that?
That
What was
was
that? Would you
That was called
describe that?
Origins, and it was a program. We discovered that teachers, educators who come out of college to go into teaching as a field oftentimes aren't really exposed to African American literature as a curriculum resource.
Right.
Or at least if they are, they're not exposed to the wide variety of literature. So if an art teacher would like to emphasize American art, they could talk about Jacob Lawrence.
Right.
We helped them understand how to do that through our Origins program, which was at St. Cloud. And we taught teachers in the field, K through 12, as well as students in the College of Education at St. Cloud, how to access not only the Givens collection, but African American literature as a resource.
Is that program still going on?
It's still, it's not going on at St. Cloud right now. It's actually, will be incorporated, I think, on our new website as a resource for teachers and educators so that they can evolve a curriculum opportunity through the new technology.
Those teachers that actually did attend the curriculum training at St. Cloud, they were able to get their continuing credits, weren't they? Weren't they allowed to use going there as a means to increase their own knowledge and get teacher credit for that? I'm sure.
They were, yes. It was a way to get their continuing education credits for their teacher certifications.
Right, that's what it was.
And they were able to access, while going to St. Cloud, credits from the University of Minnesota.
Right.
So they were universal in terms of their continuing ed requirements.
So teachers out there, that's a resource for them. The collection is that, Origins.
Exactly.
For parents and for grandparents and for fathers and brothers who want to provide their young people and young adults with a selection of African American literature. Spirited Minds is a good place for them to start there.
Spirited Minds is an excellent place to start.
For people who just want to see the wealth of African American literature, the collection at the University of Minnesota is a good place to begin.
Yes. What's unique is that it's one of the top 4 collections of its kind in the whole entire country. So
Wow.
it's a real treasure. It's a real jewel here for the state of Minnesota and for the university.
And for information about it, if they can't find us on the University of Minnesota website, contact your local library, and you'll be happy to respond, work with anybody in any way you can to, and any question they may have about African American literature, the collection, the book, or some of the other activities that you've described here today.
We'd enjoy doing that.
Archie, the reading has become such an important, in the last couple of years, reading has really taken on a national focus. And I know I'm involved in a program called Everybody Wins, that pairs adult reading volunteers with elementary school age children. And we go out on a Wednesday afternoon, we read for an hour. We call it the Power Lunch Program. And it's really been an exciting time to see young kids. We try to instill in these young kids the joy of reading at an early age. Have you found through the collection, through the work that you've been doing, that reading is becoming more important in adults too, through reading clubs and things of that nature?
I think reading is being rediscovered as a major cornerstone for education and success in life. And what you see is many organizations having reading initiatives, reading book clubs are springing up all around the country. I think a lot of community centers and church groups are discovering that reading is a way of engaging kids to want to succeed or have the tools to succeed in school.
Yeah, one of the quotations that I've heard over and over again is, the single most important thing you can do to ensure the success of a child is to teach him or her how to read at the earliest possible age. And I'm finding that in our program that has just become a tremendous, not only in reading, but when adult volunteers read with kids, they create this mentoring thing that so many kids right now are told, don't talk to strangers, stay away from strangers, and to avoid adults. Through a program of reading to children, they can find that all adults aren't bad, and it's become a very nice vehicle. In the same vein, when reading clubs do get started, I think that if we can go and be a part of a reading club to help them understand some of the books in the collection, might be something that the Givens Foundation might be available to do. Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, I would think that that would be something we would very much enjoy doing. You know, every February this time of year, there's the African American Read-In, which is a national program that takes everybody that is interested or has some feeling for that and stops them for a period of time during that day and says, let's read and let's talk about why reading is so fundamentally important to kids, and that fits our mission extremely well. And so I would. And
it would also fit the mission, I would think, of the NEA, the National Educational Association, the ALA, the American Library Association, is sponsoring on March 2nd, Read Across America. And their goal is to spend the evening with a child with a book. And if they don't have a book for a child that they're thinking of reading right now, they might be able to find one in Spirit and Minds, can't they?
Yeah, they could do that. I know that we all like to read Dr. Seuss and some of the real classics, but there are also some classics that they can find in this book. So.
Can you think of one for an age group real quick from the collection? If you could find one, what's like the age 3, 4, 5 that's in the Spirit and Minds?
Spirit and Minds. I go back to John Henry because I had my grandson read it.
Okay.
And he's a 3rd grader, and I wanted to see if he could relate to the story and if he enjoyed it as a story. And I was very touched because he invited me to come to his whole 3rd grade class.
Is that right?
And read from John Henry. And so I would say that's probably our favorite book just because it's personal to some experiences I've had. But there are many in there.
And I'm just flipping through here one. Here's one from grade 4, Jazz, My Music, My People, by Morgan Monceau, but with a foreword by Wynton Marsalis, the famous jazz musician. So by going through this book and by grades, that grade level down there, you're able to select a book for any age group, age appropriate, and that can be the book that's selected on March 2nd.
On March 2nd,
for Read Across America.
Which would be just terrific.
Well, that'd be very great.
It would be really good.
Well, I think that what's going on with the foundation, and not just because I'm a part of it, I guess I am a part of it because what's been going on in the foundation. Yes. It's been a wonderful, wonderful 10 years, and we hope to have 10 more years working in this wonderful genre of literature. Well, that's about wraps it up for today. My guest has been Archie Givens, who's the chairman of the Givens Foundation for African American Literature at the University of Minnesota. I'm Marvin Anderson, and thank you for tuning in All About Kids.
Our Gathering Places exhibit is filled with these kind of personal stories, so you really get a glimpse into the community through them.
The eldest member of the Neal household was the widowed Mrs. Bell, who came to Minnesota as a bride with her barber husband in 1886, the year of St. Paul's first winter carnival. Members of the Neal household always spoke of Mrs. Bell's arrival in that manner.
Hello, my name is Lori Brickley. I'm the Public Relations and Marketing Director at the Minnesota Historical Society. I'm standing in the History Center in our new exhibit, Our Gathering Places, African Americans in Minnesota. It is a new exhibit that has opened in January of 1998 and will run for the next 3 years. It focuses on the African American community, primarily 1940s to 1970s. Our Gathering Places was set in this setting of the barber shop and beauty salon because they are centers of the community and gathering places in their own right. In this exhibit, visitors can take a seat in a barbershop or salon chair and learn how stories were told, information was shared within the community, and how the community learned about access and jobs, education, political power, housing. In addition, there are pictures, newspaper articles, posters, lots of other reading material throughout the gallery. We also set the exhibit in a beauty shop, barber salon kind of setting because we had received some wonderful objects, a donation from the Young family who operated a beauty parlor and a barber shops in North Minneapolis. They had given some wonderful things from the satin doll salons that they operated, and they are part of our collections. And this is another way that the stories of all Minnesotans are told through the Historical Society. We collect and share the stories of Minnesotans and objects that help us tell these stories. And this kind of donation from the Young family was one that really prompted us to kind of set this exhibit in that setting and learn more about how vital the barbershops were as a community center.
Remember Rondo Avenue in the good old days, starting at Dunlap where the Rondo-Mariah streetcar turned around? The line was affectionately known as the longest line in the world, stretching from Africa to Sweden. On hot summer nights, my wife and I took our child out in her stroller to get away from the heat in our 5-room apartment, which costs us $60 a month in rent. We passed Allie Q. Brown's settlement house on McCubbin, on to University, to Bridgman's, where we got double scoops of ice cream at Dale, next to the drugstore, where we got the Sunday newspaper.
And in those parades, there would be bands from all over the country, and all kinds of cars and, Queens. And of course, the Elks Rest was the first one that started it. They started a drum and bugle corps for kids. And Phyllis Wheatley, another one, they had a drum and bugle corps.
In addition, volunteers from the African American community will be in the gallery sharing their stories and talking about objects in the exhibit, adding their personal anecdotes and stories, which is really an exciting part of the exhibit, is that kind of talking directly to people who know of the settings we're talking about, have their own stories and their own personal histories. That's a very important part of the exhibit as well.
And so I started taking lessons over at Phyllis Wheatley and became a jazz musician myself.
This is a very important exhibit for the Historical Society. It enables us to continue our mission to tell the stories and share the stories of all Minnesotans. And this is a vital community and a vital one that we need to know more about, and we're really proud to be able to share that story. And it's an important exhibit for us.